build update number 11D. It's actually been a while, but I've just been plugging away at this thing like crazy, and it's hard for me to do video and figure out what I'm doing and then do it at the same time. But here's what it looks like. I won't get ahead of myself. Turbo's in place. This bracket's not fully welded, but it's much closer. Got flex sections on each side. Here's the other one. There it is. Everything's in place pretty well so far. The driver's side I feel really good about. Just today I finished the feed and return line, which I reused the feed and then I had to find and install this fitting here because that was different. And then on the return, I used some of the factory return, and then I had to get this fitting up here. So that's ran. The power steering pump, I had that different GTO one, and I reused those lines. I had to cut the return, but it turned out pretty good. Difficult to see. There's the return line, but nothing touches the manifolds. Here's my downpipe. So it's a 4-inch downpipe with a boost activated dump on the bottom. And then I have it teed off here to a 3-inch. It's gonna go all the way back, which for now it ends right there. Kind of at a point now where I need to take off my original fuel lines so I can move those over and then continue my exhaust. Once the exhaust is built, I'll take it all apart, get the hot side fully welded, and fully weld the exhaust as well and put it all back together for last time. That's what I got so far. This is the Holly harness with the Terminator X. So this goes to the ECU, got some power stuff. Here it is all nice and laid out. This goes towards the front of the intake manifold. Here's the O2 sensor, etc. Knock sensors are there in silver with the crank sensor. That's pretty much it. Well, this is the one I pulled out of my car. It's a stock harness that I've added stuff to. Like for example, that wiring harness right there is out of a truck. I de-pinned the ECU and I pinned it into mine, and it's like way longer than it needs to be. So kind of a rat's nest. So I'm gonna go through and clean up my wiring. So I'm gonna cut out some stuff and label everything, so that way when I go put the Holly in my car, I can kind of like decipher what everything is. And I'm gonna try to clean it up as much as possible. So I think that's gonna be a lot nicer, just having a new harness in there that makes more sense. It's been a long time since I gave you guys an update on the car. I've been working on it a ton. These have been coming to work about an hour early, working all through my lunch, and then I work for a couple, 1 or 2 hours after work. Any more than that, and the girlfriend gets upset. So, you know, life is about balance, right? So anyways, I'm just gonna kind of go over what shape the car is in right now. I'm sure I'll miss some things, and I might be talking out of order a bit, but a lot of stuff happened. And so I'll just give you the overview anyway. Okay, so I redid the fuel lines. They used to come out here and then up over this. There's like a little bitty slot in here, and that's where I had both the fuel lines. And they came down here, and I ran them up here. Well, now the exhaust is coming down here, so I figured I'll go ahead and run them on the other side because it's crowded over there now. So I had them come out here. This is where my exhaust used to go. So I put a fuel filter there. Instead, I relocated that like the other deal was on the other side. So ran that through there, made a small little ghetto brace, but you can still access the fuel filter bolt, so that makes that easier for me. I replaced the element with a microglass element. Up here, I relocated the flex fuel sensor. It was on the other side, just like everything else. And I also relocated my fuel pressure regulator up there, and I'll show you where that's at in a second. Other than that, I had to, this was a straight bar, so I had to cut it, and I put a big piece of, well, it was actually a box, and I cut it down to where it is right there. There's such a expanse in the middle that it kind of bowed a little bit if you hung your own weight off of it. So I cut out this piece of metal, and the exhaust goes right through it. And you know, it's not super elegant. You know, I literally just did that with a grinder, so no fancy tools. You won't see it anyways. So there it is. I put this hanger on here, and yeah. So let me show you what the rest of it looks like. Alright. Oh, another thing I did too with the fuel system was I got these cheapo billet rails off eBay. Although it's funny, this is a stock intake manifold, and where these mounting points are, here, 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 it actually hit the rail. So you can barely see it down there, but I actually had to get like a little Dremel type tool and grind out so the rails would even fit, which is funny because it's stock, like it's a stock intake manifold. Anyways, it used to be deadhead, so the regulator was actually, well, it was right here. Those are the mounting bolts I made that I'm not going to use anymore. It was right there. I had the line come up to it, I had a return line go back to it, and then I had one line from that to the stock rail. Well, now, since I have a feed on one side and an exit on the other, I ran the feed line into this side, then the fuel goes this way. I made this little crossover tube, and then it comes out, and then it goes to the regulator, and then the regulator goes back down to the bottom of the car, back to the tank, of course. This little mount I made as well. I wanted to bring it up off the side a little bit for the wires to clear. I didn't want to have to, you know, mess with any of that stuff. So I cut that out. I used some of those little bolt inserts, which I actually use on this side too. They're pretty neat. You drill a hole, then you put the insert in, and then you smush it with the tool. So then you have like a nice threaded hole. The engine bay's dirty, so no paying attention to that. So you can't tell, but well, you can tell this part. Manifolds are off the car. The thing you can't tell is that the turbo kit is all tacked up, as well as the exhaust. The exhaust is all welded up, and I painted it as well. I'm gonna wrap some of it too. Here's my turbo mount. It's finished now. So the turbo sits on top of this. It's a Mavern Performance, I think it is. They make these mounts. So it's welded here, and I've got the power steering bracket here, and you'll see it when I get it all assembled, but I have the up and high Dirty Dingo mount, which is nice because normally there's these little tube spacers he gives you. Well, since I had a little space in between it, I was able to make this bracket. I got this from a place that makes these plates to mount LS engines, like in sandrails, but he makes these. So I bought a set of these, I cut one up and used that material to weld to this plate. And then I made some custom height spacers. Wade up here helped me use the lathe, or he did them for me, and lathed me out some of those the right height. I just tack welded them on there. So now this is the bracket with integrated spacer for that mount for the power steering pump. So all of this is a nice little sandwich right there. Works great, or it's gonna work great. Made a little extra side brace here, and then the turbo mounts here on the turbo drain, and this is the O-ring that seals against the turbo, and then the fitting will directly screw into this. The power steering lines, although they're disconnected of course, those are now modified to fit. The drain is back there. That's all done. The feed, I just reused the one that I had before, so that fits. So the rest of the turbo kit needs to be welded. Not too much more to go. I started doing the wiring. I pulled out all my stock stuff. I did this swap. Matt Owen from Dedicated Motorsports helped me out quite a bit, especially with the wiring. But all this stuff is from like 6 years ago. So I thought I had notes. I don't have my notes. I can't really blame myself too much for that since it's been so long. But I've already figured out kind of what everything does. So not a big deal. I'm going to start putting in the Holley in as soon as I can. I think I'm going to put the Holley in the glove box. And then I'll make a plate here. This is where the old ECU used to sit. So I'm gonna make a plate and then mount all my relays and everything off of this, as well as a couple power distribution blocks. So that's where we're at now. Oh, I'll go show you the exhaust. It's all welded up. I did all this stuff myself. The only thing I really needed help with the turbo kit, Buddy Edgar said he would TIG weld the hot side for me, so I said, heck, why not? I MIG welded my last one, and TIG is definitely nicer, so I said, of course. So how this works is, this is going to come out of the turbo. You got a couple oxygen sensor there. One's just for an O2 sensor, the one's for the Holley wideband. But downpipe comes down. I've got a boost activated dump here, and that will dump right onto the ground. Had to smush it a little. You'll see once it's all installed how close everything is. So when you're just driving around normal, the exhaust will go through here. Then it will connect to this pipe, which I had to dent it to get around the motor mount for installation. This little 3-foot section probably took me 6 hours. I have like 6 hours invested in this piece, but everything's super close, and you'll see what I mean. This pipe runs right between the manifold, the subframe, and the engine mount and everything. It's all super smashed. But at the end of this right here, got a motor mount to the transmission. Then this will connect to this little flex section. Got some hangers. This goes all the way back. This will connect to this, another hanger. Then I got a Varex muffler. Edgar also TIG welded this tip for me. There you go. So I got this Varex muffler. It's the one that has a electronic flap in it. So when it's closed, it's super quiet, and then when it's open, it's basically a straight through pipe. So I think this will give me the best of, you know, what I want. What's nice about it is, well, what's normally not nice about it is when the flap's closed, all the exhaust is forced through this like little bitty hole. It's like, it's crazy small. It's like 1.5 inch diameter. Well, what's nice about my setup is with the boost activated dump, the boost dump will start opening at like a few PSI, like by like 4, it's all the way open. At least that's how it was on the 3-inch one I had on my last setup. So what that means is I can cruise around with the muffler closed, and if I get on it, it'll automatically open, and I don't think it'll even make much difference because most of the flow is going to come out of the downpipe. So I think it's going to be a terrific setup. It'll be really quiet and then loud when I want it to be, and not the rest of the time, which, I don't know, I kind of like quiet cars. But anyways, I heated up with a heat gun quite a bit, and then I'm just going to let it cook out here in the sun like I am right now. So I'm going to go back inside and keep working, and we'll see. I'd like to get this thing running in like 3 weeks. I don't know if that's wishful thinking, but I think it's pretty doable. All right, here's another build update. There it is. So this hot side is completely on. Everything's tightened, everything's together. Here's how my brace turned out. I wrapped the manifolds and then put their OEM heat shields back over them. Painted everything beforehand. I wired in a 4-port boost controller, or excuse me, just a Mac valve. And I'll have my Holley as the boost controller. I don't have any zip ties on there yet. Still need to do the wiring. Here's a downpipe and the wastegate, which I have the dump welded. I just need to put it on now. Here's the exhaust. I found an accessory belt for it. Took 3 tries. I got 3 bolts all together. This is the one that I needed. It's pretty close right here. I'll probably get a metal pulley. That's just the plastic one. I bought it brand new, but after I bought it, shortly after I decided I needed to buy the metal version. Fuel rails are on. Everything's all squared away. Put my fuel pressure here. Here's some of the fuel system. Let's see.